They said women paramedics lack strength. He said it like a fact, like gravity. And then on the worst night Clarksville ever saw, a Black Hawk dropped through a wall of dust and landed because of her. Ask yourself something before we begin. How many times have you been judged in a single sentence and forced to carry that sentence into every room you walk into? Picture this: fluorescent lights buzzing, burnt coffee, diesel in the air, your uniform still damp from yesterday's sweat. You keep your head down, you check your gear twice, you do everything right because you know one mistake will be called proof you never belonged. And when the radio finally screams for help, the people who doubt you grab the spotlight first. Stay with me. By the end of this story, you won't just see what real strength looks like. You'll feel it. If you're watching from a city that's ever underestimated, you hit drop your location in the comments and don't look away. If you did not look away, then you can smell it now: the burnt coffee baked into the walls and the diesel that never quite leaves your clothes. Montgomery County EMS Station 9 sat off a service road where the traffic never stopped hissing, a low constant like distant rain. Inside the apparatus bay, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too bright for the hour, turning the concrete floor pale and flat. The rigs waited in their lanes like animals that had learned patience. Medic 12. Medic 9. A supervisor SUV with a dented bumper. On the far wall, a whiteboard still held yesterday's call count in fading marker, smeared where someone's sleeve had brushed it. Kate Mercer was already moving. She wiped the bench seat in Medic 9 with slow, deliberate circles, as if the vinyl could remember every body that had sat there. Her cloth squeaked against the surface, a small, sharp sound in the open bay. She did it again, not because it was dirty, because control lived in details, and details did not argue back. Behind her, voices carried from the kitchenette at the edge of the bay, where the coffee pot gurgled and sputtered like it hated being awake. "Upper body strength matters," Dylan Rourke said loud enough to be heard over the air compressor cycling on and off. Dylan had the kind of voice that filled rooms and dared anyone to challenge it. You ever try lifting 250 off a bathroom floor with someone half your size? It's physics. A couple of chuckles answered him. Boots scuffed. A chair scraped across tile. Kate did not turn around. She did not have to. She knew exactly who was laughing. She could hear the difference between real amusement and the kind that was borrowed just to belong. Dylan kept going because he always did. "I'm not saying women can't do the job," he said, as if that made it kinder. "I'm saying there's a reason most of us are men. It's not sexism. It's biology." There was a pause, the kind where someone could have stepped in and cut it off. No one did. "Kate does fine on the dialysis transfers," another voice added. "Thompson probably chewing on something. Nursing homes love her." More laughter. Softer now, like it had learned shame, but not enough to stop. Kate's jaw tightened. Her hand kept moving. Circle, circle, circle. The cloth came away clean every time, and she kept wiping anyway, refusing to let her body answer them with anything they could see. 10 feet away, the bay door was cracked open to the morning. Gray winter light slid in along the floor. The air outside was cold enough to bite. Inside, the heat from the building mixed with engine oil and stale coffee and whatever disinfectant they bought in bulk. Kate set the cloth down and opened the side cabinet. Trauma bag, airway bag, oxygen lines. She checked what she already knew was there. Gauze rolls aligned by size. IV start kits stacked straight. Chest seals in their packaging edges clean. Tourniquets folded the way she liked them, ready to grab without looking. Her hands moved with a quiet speed that did not match her demeanor. She did not rush. She did not fumble. She did not waste motion. On her right index finger sat a titanium ring, matte and worn smooth at the edges. It looked out of place on a county medic, like something that belonged to a different uniform. She touched it once, then again, a small turn that barely shifted the metal against her skin. Not nervous, not for show. Just a habit that lived deeper than thought. Captain Wade Harlan came out of his office with a clipboard in one hand and a paper cup in the other. He was mid-40s, built like someone who used to lift and stopped when the job turned into paperwork. His uniform shirt was always tucked, his boots always clean. His eyes were the kind that missed nothing, even when his mouth said little. He paused at the edge of the bay, watching Dylan hold court by the coffee. Dylan saw him and grinned unbothered, morning cap. Harlan took a sip from the cup like it was medicine, then looked past Dylan to Kate. Mercer. Yes, sir, Kate said without looking up. You got your rig check. Almost done. Harlan's eyes moved over her open cabinets, her supplies laid out in neat lines. Good. Dylan leaned back against the counter, smug in the safety of his audience. We were just talking about strength requirements, Captain. You know reality. Harlan let the word hang in the air for a second. Reality is, we respond with whoever's assigned. Get your gear checked. Dylan raised his hands like he was joking. Already on it. Harlan's gaze returned to Kate. It was not warm. It was not cold. It was measured. He watched her hands the way a mechanic watches an engine idle, listening for something hidden. Kate closed the cabinet and moved to the trauma bag. She unzipped it, checked each item with a quick touch, a glance, a count. Needle decompression kit present. Hemostatic gauze sealed. Chest seals intact. Tourniquet folded and ready. She pulled the tourniquet out, tested the hook and loop, checked the windlass for wear. 3 seconds. Back in. Fast enough that no one would notice unless they were looking for it. Harlan noticed. His eyes narrowed just a fraction, then softened again into neutrality. You good, Mercer? He asked. Kate finally looked up. Her face was calm expression, set eyes steady. Yes, sir. Linens are short, Harlan said, glancing at his clipboard. I restocked yesterday, Kate replied. We're still short 2 sheets, 1 pillowcase, and a blanket. Jenkins signed them out for the transport unit. Harlan blinked, then checked his clipboard like it had betrayed him. He said nothing for a beat, then gave a slight nod. All right. Kate went back to work. That was her response to everything. Work. Dylan's laughter started up again as soon as Harlan turned away. See, she's thorough. I'll give her that. Kate did not let her eyes move toward him. She kept her gaze on the bag. She had learned early that if you gave them your attention, they believed they owned it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. If it was her landlord, it would still be there later. If it was someone else, it could wait. The only thing that could not wait was the radio. The station's overhead speaker crackled, then the dispatcher's voice cut through the bay with the flat urgency of a trained throat. Medic 9 respond to 1247 Oak Ridge Avenue. Possible cardiac arrest. Bystander, CPR in progress. For half a second, the room changed. Coffee talk stopped. The air itself tightened. Kate was moving before the dispatcher finished the sentence. She snatched the trauma bag and airway bag in one smooth motion and headed toward the rig. Dylan was already at the driver's door, keys in hand, like he had been waiting for the chance to prove something. I'll drive, he said, and there was command in it, not teamwork. Kate stopped just long enough to look at him. Not defiant, not offended, just a pause, a tiny recalibration. Then she climbed into the passenger seat without a word and pulled her harness across her chest. Dylan started the engine hard, like he wanted the rig to feel his urgency. The diesel rumbled. The bay door rolled up. The cold outside rushed in, and the rig pushed out into it. Lights flashing blue and red across the wet asphalt. The siren rose and fell, a mechanical wail that always sounded like panic, even when you were calm inside it. Dylan drove fast. Not reckless, but close enough to feel like he wanted someone to notice. Kate's eyes went to the mobile data terminal. She read the notes as they came in. Male, mid-60s. Collapsed in kitchen. Wife on scene. Neighbor performing CPR. She did the math automatically. Time from dispatch. Time to arrival. Time that mattered. Her breathing slowed. She touched the titanium ring once, then again, and felt her mind click into a narrower channel. They turned into a quiet neighborhood where the houses sat low and close together, winter lawns yellowed and thin. A front door stood open, its screen swinging, tapping the frame like a nervous foot. A woman stood on the front steps, hands over her mouth, eyes wide and wet. She made a sound when she saw the rig, not a word. Just a broken inhale, like she had been holding her breath too long. A neighbor knelt in the doorway over a man on the linoleum, arms pumping, but the compressions were too shallow, hands too high. His shoulders were shaking with effort and fear. Dylan grabbed the monitor and jumped out. "Ma'am," he called to the wife. "Step back, okay? Step back for us." Kate took the airway bag and the trauma bag and moved around Dylan without touching him. The cold air hit her face, and she barely felt it. Inside the house, the kitchen smelled like coffee and bacon grease. The normal morning scents turned wrong by the sight of a body on the floor. The man's face was gray lips tinged blue. His eyes were half open, unfocused. His chest moved in irregular gasps that were not breaths so much as reflexes. The neighbor looked up at Kate like she was a judge. "I don't know if I'm doing it right," he said, voice cracking. Kate dropped to her knees beside the patient, close enough to feel the heat leaving his body. "You did the right thing," she said, voice level. "I've got him now." She placed her hands on the man's sternum, found the center by feel, locked her elbows, and leaned in. Her compressions were immediate, deep, and perfectly timed. The sound of bone and cartilage shifting under pressure was quiet but real, and it made the neighbor flinch. Kate counted in her head, not aloud, keeping rhythm like a metronome. 110 per minute. Not because she had memorized the number, because her body knew it. Dylan fumbled with the AED pads, tearing the man's shirt open with more force than necessary, hands moving fast, but clumsy with adrenaline. "Pads on," Dylan muttered, peeling, backing, and slapping adhesive onto skin. "Clear." Kate lifted her hands off the chest for the briefest moment, eyes fixed on the monitor as it analyzed. The device beeped that clinical sound that always felt cruel in a living room. "Shock advised," it said. Dylan's throat bobbed, charging. The neighbor backed away. The wife sobbed once, a sharp sound like she was being struck. "Clear," Dylan shouted. Kate's hands hovered above the man's chest, ready. The shock hit, the body jolted, and before the last twitch faded, Kate was back on the sternum, driving compressions again. No delay, no hesitation. Time narrowed. It always did. The kitchen around her could have been anywhere. The only real things were her hands and the man's chest and the thin line between them. Dylan tried to set up a bag valve mask. His hands shook as he fitted the mask to the man's face. "Airway," he said, as if saying it made it happen. Kate let him work while she kept compressions. On the 30th, she paused. Dylan squeezed the bag, pushing air into lungs that were barely listening. They cycled like that over and over. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, rhythm check, shock, back to compressions. The words in Dylan's mouth got shorter each round. The room swallowed out everything else. On the 3rd cycle, the man's lips shifted from gray to a faint pink, like someone had brushed color back into him. Kate felt it before she saw it. A change in resistance, a subtle return of tension beneath her palms. She stopped compressions and pressed 2 fingers to the carotid artery. There it was. Weak, thready, but real. "We've got a pulse," she said quietly. Dylan stared at her like he did not believe her. He leaned in, checked himself, and his eyes widened. "We do." The wife made a strangled sound and dropped to her knees beside the kitchen table. Kate did not look at her. Not yet. Not while there was still work. Kate opened an IV kit with calm fingers, found a vein, and slid the catheter in on the first try. No fishing. No hesitation. She taped it down like she had done it 1,000 times. "Let's move," Kate said. "We need him in the truck." Dylan nodded too fast. Yeah, okay." They packaged the patient, transferred him onto the stretcher, secured straps. The neighbor hovered uselessly, pale and shaking. Kate looked up at him once. "You did good," she said, and it was simple and true. "You kept him alive until we got here." The man swallowed hard and nodded, tears bright in his eyes. As they wheeled the stretcher out, the wife stumbled alongside them, one hand clinging to the rail, the other grabbing Kate's sleeve for a second, as if Kate was something solid in a room that had turned to water. "Is he going to be okay?" she whispered. Kate met her eyes for the first time. There was fear there, raw and pleading. Kate did not offer a promise. She did not give false comfort. She gave what she could give. "We're taking good care of him," she said. "Stay with us. Keep talking to him." The wife nodded, tears running down her cheeks. Okay, okay. The ride to the hospital was short and long at the same time. Dylan drove siren-screaming, shoulders tense, jaw clenched. Kate sat in the back with the patient monitor clipped on oxygen-flowing hands steady on the IV line and the bag valve mask as needed. The man's eyes fluttered. His chest rose more evenly now, his pulse strengthened by degrees. Kate watched the numbers and watched the man's face reading the smallest changes. She touched the ring once, then again, as she adjusted the oxygen and listened to breath sounds. At the emergency department, the doors opened into bright white light and organized chaos. Nurses moved with purpose. A physician met them at the threshold, eyes already on the monitor strip. 65-year-old male. Kate reported, voice clear. Witnessed collapse, bystander, CPR. V-fib shocked 3 times ROSC prior to transport. IV established oxygen, applied vitals, improving. The physician's gaze flicked from the strip to her face. Clean work, he said, and there was no condescension in it. Just recognition. Thank you. Kate nodded once and stepped back as the team took over, hands already pulling the patient into the bay. Dylan signed paperwork at the counterpen, scratching too hard. When they walked back out into the cold air, he shook his head as if he needed to shake off the scene. That was lucky, Dylan said. Kate didn't respond. Her eyes were on the rig, on the way the back doors latched on the straps that needed wiping down. Her mind was already sorting tasks. Dylan kept talking because silence made him uncomfortable. I mean, timing was good. He probably wasn't fully arrested. Kate climbed into the passenger seat and closed the door, shutting out his voice for a moment. She touched the ring once, then again, and stared out the window at the gray Tennessee sky. Back at Station 9, the day crew had shifted back into its rhythm. Boots clomped chairs, scraped the coffee pot, gurgled again. The smell of microwaved breakfast burritos replaced the smell of panic. Dylan was already telling the story before his jacket was even off. Yeah, we got him back, he said to a cluster of medics near the sink. Timing was good. He wasn't down long. Thompson nodded like he was judging a game highlight. Nice. Captain Harlan appeared near the whiteboard, listening without joining. His eyes went to Kate as she moved past them toward the supply room. Dylan corrected himself, voice lifting. Adequate work, he said, as if he needed to take the shine off it. It's not like she dragged him back from the dead. A few chuckles. Not as loud as earlier. The room had seen enough of Kate's hands to be less certain of Dylan's jokes. Kate did not stop. She did not turn. She walked into the supply room and shut the door behind her. The quiet inside was immediate, thick. Shelves lined with boxes and bins, everything labeled, everything begging to be put back in order. Kate pulled supplies and restocked the trauma bag with fast, economical motions. New gauze, fresh pads. Replace the used IV kit. Check expiration dates without staring at them too long. Her hands did not shake. They never did. She could still hear Dylan's voice muffled through the door. She could still hear the laughter, the way it tried to pretend it was harmless. Kate breathed in through her nose and let it out slowly. She touched the titanium ring once, then again, and returned to work. The hours moved. Calls came and went, minor things that barely left a mark. A fall at a grocery store. A teenager with a panic attack in a school hallway. An elderly man who called because he was lonely and did not know how else to make someone show up. Kate treated them all with the same calm precision. Dylan drove with the same impatience. At one point, they sat in the rig outside a nursing facility waiting for a nurse to print paperwork. Dylan scrolled his phone and shook his head at something he saw, then looked at Kate with a sideways smirk. You ever think about doing something else? He asked. This job doesn't exactly pay great. Kate watched the front doors of the facility, the way the automatic doors opened and closed like a mouth. I like the work, she said. Dylan snorted softly. You could do more. You're good. Real good. Kate didn't look at him. I do my job. Dylan leaned back, restless. No, I mean, you don't freeze. You don't hesitate. Kate's fingers found the ring. One touch. Then another. Just doing my job, she repeated. Dylan watched her for a second, then looked away, as if the quiet between them felt like standing too close to an edge. Later back at the station, the sun dipped low enough that the bay door framed a strip of orange light across the concrete floor. Kate was at the checklist again, pen moving in straight lines, initials written clean. Captain Harlan stepped into the bay and leaned against the side of Medic 9, arms crossed. He had that look of someone who had been turning something over in his head for hours. Kate did not stop writing. She could feel him there, the weight of attention. "You're always early," Harlan said. Kate capped the pen. "Habit." Harlan nodded, eyes on the rig, on the open compartments on the bags, sitting in their places like they had been staged. "Your rig is always ready." "It should be," Kate said. Harlan's gaze shifted to her hands, then to the titanium ring. "Where'd you get that?" Kate's answer came without pause. "Gift." Harlan's eyes held on her for a beat too long. Then he looked away, as if he had seen something he could not name. The station phone rang. Someone shouted for Thompson. The normal noise filled in the space where questions could have lived. Harlan pushed off the rig. "Good work today," he said, and his voice was neutral, but the words mattered because he did not hand them out. Kate nodded. "Yes, sir." Harlan started to walk away, then stopped and turned back as if he had forgotten something. He looked at her again, not at her face, but at her posture, the way she stood balanced and still. "You didn't hesitate in that kitchen," he said quietly. Kate held his gaze now. There wasn't time. Harlan's mouth tightened, not in disapproval. In thought. "No," he said. There wasn't. He walked back toward his office without another word. Kate stared at the bay door for a moment, at the fading light, at the way the shadows lengthened across the floor. Then she opened the trauma bag again, not because it needed it, but because checking it was something she could control. She pulled out the tourniquet, tested, it checked the windlass. 3 seconds. She put it back and zipped the bag shut. Across the bay, Dylan laughed at something on his phone and slapped Jenkins on the shoulder. The sound echoed off the concrete, careless and loud. Kate lifted the bag and slid it into its compartment with a soft thud. She closed the door and latched it, the metal click sharp in the quiet. Captain Harlan stood at the end of the bay near the whiteboard, watching her without making it obvious. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes stayed on her hands a moment longer than they should have, as if he were trying to understand how a person could move that smoothly without showing it in their voice. The station settled into late morning the way it always did, like a body returning to baseline after a scare. The lights stayed harsh. The air stayed stale. Someone turned on a radio low in the kitchenette, a country song that sounded tired, even at full volume. Boots crossed the bay in slow loops. Doors opened and closed. Paperwork stacks grew. Kate kept herself busy where the noise could not reach her. In the supply room, she restocked what they had used, then restocked again, as if repetition could erase the echo of Dylan's voice from earlier. She moved down the shelves, hand-brushing labels, eyes scanning dates, mind cataloging. The sharp smell of plastic packaging mixed with disinfectant. It was clean. It was predictable. It did not ask her to perform. When she stepped back into the bay, the kitchenette laughter rose again, louder now, as if the morning save had earned them a looser mood. Dylan was leaning against the counter with his coffee, telling a story to Thompson and Jenkins, and a couple of others who had drifted in from the day unit. "You should have seen the extraction on that Route 48 wreck last week," Dylan said, voice bright with excitement. Fire had the spreaders screaming for 20 minutes. Door wouldn't give. Guy's femur was out. Just out. Like a broken broom handle. Thompson winced but smiled anyway. Jenkins chuckled through a mouthful of food. "That's why I don't do nights anymore." Dylan sipped his coffee and nodded toward Kate as she crossed behind them. Mercer wasn't even on that call. She was running a dialysis transfer. A couple of laughs. Not sharp this time, more casual, but still aimed. Kate did not stop. Her gaze stayed forward, fixed on the cabinet where she had left her clipboard. She told herself the words were nothing. She told herself she did not care. She told herself she had heard worse. Then the French press plunger moved. Someone pressed it down slow, smoothed the glass and metal, making a soft, descending sound that ended with a muted thunk. For a heartbeat, the station disappeared. Heat pressed down from above like a hand. Dust clung to her tongue. The smell of burned fuel and hot metal filled her throat. Rotor blades hammered overhead, heavy and relentless, not the polite whir of a news helicopter, but the deep pounding that turned air into violence. A voice in a headset shouted her name, distorted by static, urgent, clipped. She was kneeling in sand that was not sand at all. It was ground glass and powder, and her gloves were slick and red. A man screamed somewhere close, a raw animal sound, and another voice counted down like time was a weapon. Kate blinked. Fluorescent lights. Concrete. A microwave beeped. Jenkins laughed at something Dylan said. She kept walking. Her fingers found the titanium ring without her permission, turned it once, then again, and she forced her breathing into the steady rhythm she used on scene. In, out, in, out. Control the body and the mind follows. She reached the cabinet, opened it, and pulled out the station checklist. The paper shook slightly between her fingers. She held it still with both hands until it stopped. Behind her, Dylan's voice rolled on. "I'm just saying," he said, and his tone was casual, as if he were talking about whether some calls need muscle. "Doesn't matter how good your technique is, you still gotta move weight." Thompson nodded like he wanted to agree, but did not want to be the one who said it. "We all gotta move weight," Dylan smirked. "Exactly. Some people are built for it, some aren't." Kate pressed the clipboard against her chest and walked out of the kitchenette area, not faster, not slower, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She went to the bay door and stood where the cold air seeped in through the crack. Outside traffic moved on the road like nothing had happened in anyone's kitchen that morning, like no one had died and come back. The sky was low and pale. Winter had a way of making everything look unfinished. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Landlord. She slid the phone back into her pocket without opening the message. There were some things you could not fix in the middle of a shift. There were some things you did not want to look at, because looking made them real. Behind her, the station noise continued. She heard Captain Harlan's office door open and close. She heard his boots cross the bay, the measured pace of a man who had spent enough time on scenes to know that haste was not the same thing as speed. Mercer Harlan called from behind her. Kate turned. He was holding his clipboard pen tucked behind his ear coffee cup in his other hand. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "Walk with me," he said. Kate followed him toward his office without asking why. She had learned that questions did not change outcomes. Inside, Harlan's office smelled like old paper and printer toner. The walls were lined with binders, training manuals, and a bulletin board that held memos no one read. A small window looked out onto the bay, but the blinds were half closed, like the room preferred not to witness what happened outside. Harlan closed the door. Kate stood by the chair he indicated. She did not sit until he sat. It was not fear. It was habit. He studied her for a moment, then flipped a page on his clipboard as if he needed something to do with his hands. "You ran that code clean this morning," he said. Kate nodded. "Yes, sir. Your compressions were solid. Your timing was better than most of my senior medics." Kate said nothing. Praise was dangerous. Praise made people look closer. Harlan set the clipboard down and leaned back. "You don't talk much." "I'm here to work," Kate said. Harlan's mouth tightened slightly, almost a smile, but not quite. "We all say that." Kate kept her face still. He tapped his pen against the desk once. "You ever work anywhere else?" "Different county, private service, fire-based." "No, sir." Harlan held her gaze, the silence stretching just long enough to become uncomfortable. Kate did not break it. She had learned how to hold still in silence. Silence was easier than noise. Harlan looked away first, as if he had decided not to push. "All right," he said. "Keep doing what you're doing." "Yes, sir." When Kate stood to leave, Harlan spoke again, quieter. "You move like someone who's been on scenes that don't have ambulances parked neatly at the curb," he said. Kate paused, hand on the doorknob. For a second, she felt the sand again, the rotor wash, the metallic taste. She turned back to him. "I train hard," she said. Harlan watched her like he was listening to the tone more than the words. Then he nodded once the conversation closed. Kate left his office and stepped into the bay, as if she had not been asked anything at all. Dylan was by the rig, checking the oxygen tank, and he looked up when she passed. "What did the captain want?" he asked. "Paperwork," Kate said. Dylan snorted. "That's his love language." Kate kept walking. The day rolled forward. A call came in around noon, a minor crash at an intersection near a strip mall. No reported injuries, just a request for evaluation. Dylan drove fast, eager. Kate sat beside him with her hands folded, eyes scanning the road and the shoulders and the way traffic behaved around the lights. When they arrived, two cars sat nose to nose in a turn lane, bumpers cracked, airbags deployed in one. A woman stood beside the curb, holding her phone, talking too loudly. A man leaned against his car, with a dazed look rubbing his chest, as if trying to remind himself it was still there. Dylan walked up first, voice bright and confident. "Hey folks, we're gonna check you out." Kate moved around the vehicles instead of toward the people. Her eyes went to the ground, to the undercarriage, to the angles of metal and plastic. She crouched near the rear axle of the sedan and saw a thin line of liquid dripping steady, not fast enough to pool yet, but fast enough to matter. She leaned closer, sniffed once, and knew. She stood and raised her hand toward the nearest firefighter. "Fuel leak," she said. "Rear line. Keep ignition sources clear." The firefighter blinked, then leaned in and saw it. "Good catch," he muttered and signaled to his crew. Dylan glanced over, annoyed at being interrupted in his performance. "We got it," he said. Kate's eyes stayed on the strut near the wheel well. It was fractured bent at an angle that made her skin itch. The metal looked ready to give. She pointed. "That could collapse if someone leans on the car," she said. The firefighter's expression shifted, respect, appearing where skepticism had been. "Copy," he said, and moved his crew back. Dylan approached her when the patients were cleared and they were walking back toward the rig. His voice was low, so no one else could hear. "You see stuff nobody else sees," he said. Kate opened the rig door and climbed in. "Practice." Dylan followed, sliding into the driver's seat. He started the engine and looked at her, curiosity mixing with discomfort. "Yeah, but what kind?" he asked. Kate stared out the windshield. The light was flat. The sky looked like it had been painted with dirty water. She touched the ring once, then again, just enough to remind herself she was here. "Just practice," she said again. Dylan watched her a moment longer than necessary, then looked away as if he had been burned. Back at Station 9, the day crew had shifted slightly. New faces came in. Old faces left. The station never stopped breathing. It just changed lungs. Kate sat at a small desk in the corner of the bay and filled out run reports with the same methodical precision she used on scene. Every line straight, every time accurate, every word chosen. Paperwork was a language too, one that could protect you if you spoke it correctly. Her phone buzzed again. Not the landlord this time. Unknown number. Kate stared at the screen for a second before opening it. The message was short. "Saw your name on a county roster. Wasn't sure it was you. Hope you're doing okay." There was no signature, no context. Just a sentence that landed heavy in her chest like a hand closing around something delicate. Kate's mouth went dry. She read it again, then locked the phone and set it face down on the desk. She did not reply. Across the bay, Dylan was telling another story, this one about a bar fight call that had ended with a man spitting blood onto his boots. He laughed as he described it like it was entertainment. Kate kept her eyes on her paperwork. The shift finally thinned into evening. Most of the day, crew went home. The station got quieter, the kind of quiet that made every sound sharper. The coffee pot was emptied and washed. The kitchenette lights dimmed. A television in the common room played low, but no one watched it. Kate stood in the apparatus bay, alone for a moment, listening to the building settle. She could hear distant traffic. She could hear the HVAC cycling. She could hear the faint clink of someone's spoon in a mug. Harlan's office door opened. He stepped out with his coat in hand, looking like he was finally allowing himself to be tired. He stopped when he saw Kate by the rig. "You're still here?" he said. Kate nodded, finishing inventory. Harlan looked at the open compartment doors, the bags laid out. "You already did that." Kate zipped the trauma bag with a soft rasp. "I like to be sure." Harlan's eyes went to her hands again, then to the ring. He hesitated, then spoke as if choosing his words carefully. "Most people in this county learn to do the job," he said. You look like you learned to survive it. Kate felt her throat tighten. She kept her face steady. I just work, she said. Harlan studied her, then nodded once, slow. All right. Get some rest when you can. He walked toward the exit without another word. Kate stood alone in the bay after he left the open door framing the darkening sky. She touched the ring once, then again, and forced the tightness in her chest to loosen. When her shift ended, she did not go straight home. She sat on the tailgate of her truck in the station parking lot, engine off, heater silent, letting the cold air keep her awake. The sky had turned deep blue, and the first stars were starting to show between thin clouds. She pulled her wallet out and slid a small photo free. 4 people in tan uniforms, faces dusted and smiling in harsh light. The background was desert and sky, and something that looked like a helicopter tail blurred at the edge. They looked young. They looked tired. They looked like they had learned to grin at pain because there was nothing else to do. Kate traced one face with her thumb, then another. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. It did not come. The screen stayed dark. Kate stared at the photo for a long moment, then folded it carefully and put it away. Her hand drifted toward the titanium ring, then stopped halfway. She looked at it instead, the scratches catching faint light. The ring was not jewelry. It was an anchor. She closed her hand into a fist, then opened it again. Breathing in, breathing out. Control the body. The mind follows. She went home. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, it came in fragments, and the fragments carried sound. Rotor blades. Radios. A voice shouting numbers. A scream cutting off too quickly. Kate woke before dawn, throat-tight sweat cold on her skin. She sat on the edge of her bed and waited for her heart to slow. The morning shift began the way the last one had, with burnt coffee and diesel and fluorescent light that made everyone look pale. Kate was the first one in again. She did not announce herself. She simply started moving. She checked the rigs. She restocked. She ran the inventory with calm hands. She kept her mind narrow. Dylan arrived 20 minutes later, yawning, hair still damp from a rushed shower. He grabbed a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. You ever think about doing something else? He asked again, like the question had been chewing on him overnight. Kate did not look up from the checklist. No. Dylan took a sip, grimaced. This coffee tastes like regret. Kate said nothing. Dylan watched her write. You're always calm, he said. Even when it's bad. Kate's pen paused for half a second, then moved again. It's the job. Dylan nodded slowly, then looked away, unsettled by the fact that her answers were too clean. The day unfolded with small calls and long stretches of waiting, the kind of time that let thoughts creep in if you were not careful. In the afternoon, Harlan called Kate into his office again. The blinds were still half closed. The air still smelled like toner. Sit, he said. Kate sat. Harlan folded his hands on the desk. I've been watching you, he said. Not because I'm looking for problems. Because I'm trying to understand. Kate waited. He leaned forward slightly. You don't socialize. You don't complain. You don't talk about your life. You show up, you do the work, you go home. Kate's face stayed neutral. Harlan continued. And you are good at the work. Too good for someone with 2 years in this county. Kate kept her voice steady. I study. Harlan's eyes tightened. Studying doesn't give you that. Studying doesn't make your hands move before other people's fear even starts. Silence filled the office, thick and heavy. Kate felt the old instinct rise, the one that told her to stand and leave, to end the conversation by leaving the room. Instead, she stayed still because leaving too fast would look like guilt. There's nothing you need to know, she said. Harlan watched her for a long moment. Then he exhaled slowly, as if accepting he would not get more today. All right, he said, but understand something. People notice. They talk. And when people talk, they start asking questions in places that aren't as patient as I am. Kate held his gaze. Yes, sir. Harlan nodded once. Get back to work. Kate stood, opened the office door, and stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The floor felt too hard under her boots. She leaned her back against the wall for a brief second, eyes closed, and breathed. Her fingers found the titanium ring. One turn, then another. She pushed off the wall and walked back into the bay. The station was quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that makes you listen harder for the radio, because the radio is the only thing that breaks it on purpose. Kate was halfway through restocking a cabinet when the dispatch tone hit sharp and unmistakable, cutting through the building like a blade. All units stand by. The second tone followed immediately, urgent, louder, as if volume could shorten distance. Kate's head lifted. Dylan froze by the coffee pot cup, halfway to his mouth. The dispatcher's voice came through, rapid and controlled. Multiple vehicle collision, Highway 79, near the river bridge. Reported entrapment. Unknown number of patients, fire and law en route. Kate's body was already moving before the sentence ended. The rig bay blurred into practiced motion. The trauma bag came off its hook. The airway bag followed. Kate's gloved hands checked latches by feel, not sight. Dylan snatched the monitor, then looked back as if waiting for someone to tell him he was doing it right. Captain Harlan stepped out of his office as they passed, coat still on the hook behind him, clipboard in hand. His eyes tracked Kate, then the bags, then Dylan's face. "Keep your radio clear," he said, voice flat and controlled. "Give me updates when you have them." "Yes, sir," Dylan said, too eager. Kate said nothing. She was already counting time. They rolled out into traffic with lights cutting through winter gray. The siren rose and fell, bouncing off storefront windows and bare trees. Clarksville moved around them the way a river parts around a rock, angry and reluctant. Dylan drove like speed could erase doubt. His hands gripped the wheel, tight knuckles pale. He glanced at Kate like he wanted her to say something to share the adrenaline with him. Kate watched the road ahead through the windshield eyes, calm mind already building the scene in her head. Bridge, river, traffic bottleneck, wet pavement, entrapment. She touched the titanium ring once, then again, and her breathing settled lower in her chest. Radio traffic stacked quickly. Engine 4 on scene. Multiple vehicles, one on its side. Possible entrapment. Law en route, shutting down eastbound lanes. Second ambulance staging. Dylan's jaw flexed. Sounds like a mess. Kate's gaze stayed forward. Slow down before the bridge. People rubberneck. Dylan bristled at being corrected, then eased off the accelerator anyway. They crested the rise, and the scene opened in front of them like a wound. Headlights and hazard flashers flickered through a thin veil of mist. 3 vehicles were tangled in the right lane. Metal twisted glass scattered across asphalt like ice. One SUV lay on its side wheels, still spinning slowly as if it had not accepted gravity yet. A sedan was crushed between 2 larger vehicles, roof buckled, inward steering wheel pressed deep. Fire trucks were angled across lanes, red lights washing everything in pulses. A line of cars sat trapped behind the wreck drivers, staring phones, lifted faces lit by screens. A state trooper shouted at people to back up, voice swallowed by sirens. Smoke drifted from one engine bay, thin but sharp. The smell of gasoline hung in the air, faint but present, like a warning you could not ignore. Dylan pulled the rig into a position behind the first due unit tires, crunching over glass near the shoulder. He grabbed the radio and started talking fast. "Medic 9 on scene, where do you want us?" The answer came from a voice that sounded older and tired. "Stage near engine 4. We got multiple patients. I need hands." Kate jumped out before Dylan finished unbuckling. Cold air hit her face hard. The bridge wind carried the river's damp smell and the metallic tang of smoke. She scanned the scene the way she scanned a room, not taking it all in at once, but slicing it into priorities. Red lights, white headlights, firefighters arguing near the crushed sedan, their helmets turning toward each other in sharp motions. A woman standing in the road with blood on her forehead, swaying, calling a name over and over. "Jacob, Jacob. Where are you?" A medic stood in the middle of it all, frozen. Vince Calder. He was a veteran by reputation, 15 years, and the kind of guy people called steady. Right now, he looked like his body had forgotten how to move. His radio hung loose in his hand. His eyes were wide fixed on the crushed sedan, like he was watching something he could not touch. Kate walked straight to him. "Calder," she said loud enough to cut through siren noise. He blinked hard, like waking. "Too many," he muttered. "We got the SUV, we got the sedan, we got. I can't get a count." Kate looked past him, not at him. "Who is your worst patient?" Calder's mouth opened, then closed. His gaze flicked to the crushed sedan. "That one," he said, voice thin. "Pinned driver. Fire is trying to figure out the frame." Kate nodded once. "Then that is where we go." Calder swallowed relief and embarrassment mixing in his eyes. He started to speak again, maybe to regain control, but Kate was already moving. Dylan jogged up behind her monitor strap across his chest, breath fogging. "Kate, you want me on triage or airway or what?" Kate did not look at him. "Bring the needle kit and airway bag. Stay with me." Dylan hesitated. "Needle kit for what?" Kate turned her head just enough that he caught her eyes. Her voice dropped sharp and calm. "Because I said so." That tone changed him. His posture tightened. He nodded and moved. Firefighters were clustered at the sedan, arguing about how to spread the door without collapsing the crushed roof. One of them held hydraulic spreaders ready, but his hands were unsure. "We need cribbing first," a firefighter said. "If we pop that door wrong, we fold the frame." "We don't have time to build a house around it," another snapped. "He's fading." Kate stepped into their circle like she had a right to be there. A firefighter lifted a hand to stop her. "Ma'am, you can't go in there." Kate did not slow, then move. Her boots crunched glass as she ducked under the twisted doorframe and crawled into the sedan's broken geometry. The space smelled of blood-hot plastic and something electrical burning. The roof pressed low. The steering column was shoved into the driver's chest. The man inside was pinned forward, chin near his sternum, eyes half-open, breath fast and shallow. His face was gray. Kate's gloved fingers found his carotid pulse. Weak, rapid, present. She watched his chest for a second longer than most people would allow themselves. The left side barely moved. The right heaved with effort. His neck veins stood out under skin that looked too tight. "Hey, Kate," said close to his ear. "I'm Kate. Look at me if you can." His eyes flickered toward her, unfocused. "Stay with me," she said, voice low, steady. "You are not dying in this car." She shifted her hand to his ribs, feeling the pattern of movement. The chest wall on the left felt wrong, stiff and uneven. She listened with her stethoscope pressed against the man's side, fighting the siren noise and the wind. Breath sounds were diminished on the left, almost absent. Her mind sharpened into a single point: tension pneumothorax. She looked out through the broken window at the firefighters. "I need that door off in 60 seconds. I need access to his left chest." A firefighter stared at her. "We're working it." Kate's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "Work faster." She leaned closer to the patient and watched his lips, the slight blue at the edges, the way his breaths became smaller, faster. The pulse under her fingers thinned again, like a rope fraying. She reached through the window and snapped her hand once. "Needle kit," she called. Dylan appeared at the window, breath-hard, eyes wide. He held the kit like it was a live wire. "Kate, that's not in our protocol. We don't do that out here." Kate looked at him, and her expression was not anger. It was certainty. "Hand it to me," she said. Dylan did not move. His eyes flicked toward Calder, toward the firefighters, toward the chaos, looking for someone to tell him what to do. Kate's voice went colder, quieter. "Move." Something in Dylan broke loose. He shoved the kit through the broken window. A firefighter beside him protested. "What is she doing?" Dylan's voice cracked. "I don't know." Kate tore the package open with her teeth, and one hand eyes never leaving the patient. Inside was a catheter needle, long and thin, the kind that looked too small to matter until it did. She palpated the patient's chest quickly, fingers finding landmarks by feel. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. She could do it in darkness. She could do it with gloves slicked in blood. She could do it with rotors overhead. Her hand did not shake. The patient's eyes rolled slightly. His breath hitched. Kate leaned in close. "This will help you breathe," she told him, though she did not know if he could understand. "Stay with me." She cleaned the site fast, then drove the needle in at a 90-degree angle with controlled force. For a split second, there was resistance. Then it gave. A hiss of pressurized air escaped, sharp and unmistakable, even under sirens, like a tire puncturing. The patient's chest rose higher on the next breath. Color shifted at the edges of his mouth. His eyes widened and he sucked in air like someone emerging from underwater. Kate exhaled once controlled. She secured the catheter eyes on the monitor Dylan had shoved near the window. His oxygen is climbing, Dylan said, stunned. Kate, it's climbing. Kate did not look up. Door, she said. Now. The firefighters moved differently after that. The arguing stopped. Hands found purpose. Hydraulic spreaders bit into metal with a scream. The door frame groaned, then gave. The door peeled back enough to create space, and cold air rushed into the sedan's crushed interior. Kate looked at the firefighter closest to her. Backboard. Collar. Get him ready. We moved together. The firefighter nodded once, no questions now. Calder appeared near the window, face pale. Mercer, he said. Voice strained. You can't just do that. That's advanced. Kate met his eyes for the first time. Her gaze was steady, and it made him look away. He was dying, she said. Now he is not. Calder swallowed. We need medical control. Then Kate replied. Do not stand there. Calder's radio finally came up to his mouth. His voice trembled as he gave the report, words stumbling over each other at first, then smoothing as he followed Kate's rhythm. Fire slid a backboard into position. Kate stabilized the patient's head and neck, hands firm but gentle, and counted. 1, she said. 2, 3. They lifted in a coordinated motion, slow enough to protect the spine, fast enough to keep time from stealing what Kate had bought. The patient came free with a groan of metal and a gasp of air. He was placed on the stretcher straps, tightened collar secured. Kate climbed out of the sedan, knees scraping metal boots landing on wet asphalt. Her gloves were smeared with blood and dust. Her face remained calm. Dylan stood near the stretcher, eyes locked on her hands. I didn't know you could do that, he said, voice low, almost afraid. Kate checked the catheter placement, then adjusted the oxygen. Keep your monitor on him, she said. Watch his pressure. Dylan nodded too quickly, as if he was trying to earn forgiveness without saying sorry. Calder stepped closer, voice rough. Where did you learn that? Kate looked at him, expression unreadable. Training. Calder's brows pulled together. County does not teach that. Kate did not answer. The stretcher wheels rolled. The rig doors opened. They loaded the patient and secured him. Kate climbed into the back without asking, and Dylan took the driver's seat like a man who had forgotten how to be loud. As the rig pulled away, Kate's focus narrowed to the patient. His eyes were open now, tracking her face, breathing more evenly. His pulse felt stronger under her fingers. You are doing good, she told him. Stay with me. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Kate leaned in. Do not talk. Breathe. She watched his chest rise and fall. She watched the monitor numbers stabilize. She kept one hand near the catheter, ready to act again if the pressure built. Her other hand brushed her ring once, then again, just enough to keep her center anchored. Dylan's voice came over the intercom from the front, quieter than usual. Hospital wants a report. They asked what we did. Kate answered without hesitation. Tell them exactly what I did and why. Dylan swallowed audibly. Okay. They arrived at the emergency department with the back doors opening into bright light and sharp smells. The trauma team met them, eyes scanning the patient's chest, then the catheter. A physician looked up at Kate. His gaze was direct, assessing. Who performed the decompression? Kate did not glance at Dylan. I did. The physician's eyes held on her face. Good call, he said. That is what kept him alive. Kate nodded once. He is still fragile. We have him, the physician said. Go. Kate stepped back as the team rolled the stretcher away, hands taking over, voices crisp and controlled. In the hallway outside the bay, Dylan leaned against the wall like his legs had decided they were optional. His face was pale. Sweat shone at his hairline. That was not standard, he said. Kate removed her gloves and dropped them into the biohazard bin. It worked. Dylan stared at the floor. You told me to bring the kit like you knew. Kate's expression did not change. I listened. Dylan looked up at her, and for the first time, his usual confidence was gone. Who are you? He asked, quietly. Kate held his gaze. A medic. Dylan opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he had no ground left. They returned to Station 9 in late-night silence. The bay lights were dimmer now, most of the crew gone. The building hummed with emptiness. Kate restocked the rig as if nothing unusual had happened. Her hands moved with the same precise economy, replacing what they had used, checking dates, refolding items the way she preferred. She could still hear the hiss of air from the patient's chest, could still feel the moment the needle gave, but she locked it behind a calm face. Dylan hovered nearby, unsure what to do with his body. Captain Harlan was waiting in his office. The door was open, light spilling onto the hallway floor. He did not call out. He simply watched as Kate walked past with a bag of used supplies. "Mercer," he said. Kate paused. "Come in." She stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. The blinds were still half closed. The desk was neat. A single lamp cast warm light on the clipboard in front of him. Harlan looked at her hands, then at her face. "You performed a field decompression," he said. "Yes, sir. That is not part of our standard county protocols," Harlan said, voice steady. "It is an advanced procedure. It was necessary," Kate replied. Harlan studied her for a long moment. "I am not questioning the necessity. I am questioning where you learned it." Kate held her face neutral. "I study." Harlan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Studying does not give you hands like that." Silence filled the office, heavy and patient. Kate felt her pulse in her throat. She did not touch the ring. She kept her hands still. Harlan leaned forward. "People are asking questions." Fire asked. Medical control asked. The trauma surgeon asked. Kate met his eyes. Let them ask. Harlan exhaled slowly, not angry, more tired. "You cannot hide forever." Kate's voice stayed calm. "I am not hiding." Harlan watched her like he was trying to decide whether that was true. Then he sat back. "Go finish your paperwork," he said. "We will talk again." Kate nodded once and left the office, closing the door softly behind her. In the bay, Dylan was waiting near the rig, leaning against the side door. His posture was awkward, like a boy who had broken something valuable and did not know how to admit it. "Kate," he said. Kate kept walking. "Kate, wait," Dylan said, voice rough. She stopped and turned. Dylan swallowed. "That call, the way you took over. I have never seen anyone do that. Not here." Kate's expression remained unreadable. "You were there." Dylan winced. "I said some stupid things." Kate stared at him for a beat. "You did." Dylan nodded. "I am sorry." Kate studied him, not with anger, but with a cold measure of truth. "Apology accepted," she said. Dylan's shoulders loosened slightly, relief flashing across his face. "Can I ask you something?" Kate did not answer immediately. She waited. Dylan's voice dropped. "Why did you know what to do?" "That fast." Kate held his gaze. "Because people die when you hesitate." Dylan blinked as if the words struck him somewhere deep. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They do." Kate turned and walked away. The conversation was over because it needed to be. The next morning, the station felt different. Not louder. Not quieter. Different in the way people looked up when Kate walked in, then looked away too quickly. Different in the way conversations paused when her boots crossed the floor. Different in the way new respect and old discomfort fought in the same air. Kate poured coffee into her thermos, black, no sugar, and sat at the briefing table without seeking a seat. She did not seek acceptance either. Captain Harlan stood at the front of the room with call stats on a screen no one cared about. He spoke in his usual measured voice, but his eyes flicked toward Kate more than once, as if she were a new variable in a system that had been stable. Dylan sat 2 chairs away, silent for once, hands clasped. Calder sat near the back, face tired. Thompson whispered to Jenkins, then stopped when Kate glanced their way. Harlan was mid-sentence when the door opened. A man walked in and the room shifted as if everyone felt the change before they saw it. He was mid-30s, close-cropped hair, face weathered in a way that did not come from county EMS. He wore cargo pants and a fitted jacket, no uniform, but his posture was military-controlled and precise. He moved like the floor belonged to him. His eyes scanned the room with quick, methodical assessment, not curiosity. He ignored Harlan at first. His gaze stopped on Kate. Kate's body went still. For a fraction of a second, the fluorescent light seemed too bright, the room too small. Her throat tightened. The man walked toward her steps, quiet on the tile. Harlan stopped speaking. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man did not look at him. His eyes stayed locked on Kate. "Mercer," he said. Kate's jaw tightened. She did not stand. She did not flinch. She stared back with a calm she did not feel. "I think you have the wrong person," Kate said. The man shook his head slowly. Harlan stepped closer, authority rising in his posture. "Sir, you need to tell me who you are." The man finally glanced at Harlan just long enough to acknowledge him, then looked back at Kate. "Staff Sergeant Catherine Mercer," he said, voice steady. "Flight medic, 160. You used to run with the Night Stalkers." The room went silent in a way that felt physical. Even the coffee pot seemed to stop. Dylan's mouth opened. No sound came out. Calder's face drained of color. Kate's hands were flat on her thighs. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips. She forced her breathing into a slow rhythm. In, out. "You are mistaken," she said again, and the lie sounded thin even to her. The man's expression did not change. "We ran a joint op in Helmand," he said. 2014. You pulled my teammate out of a burning vehicle after an IED. Third-degree burns airway compromise. You intubated him in the dirt under fire. Kate's eyes stayed on the table in front of her, as if staring hard enough could make the surface swallow her whole. Harlan's voice was quiet now. "Mercer." Kate did not look up. The man stepped closer, and his voice softened, not cruel, not triumphant, just real. "You wore a titanium ring," he said. "Matte finish. Scratched. You touched it twice before every procedure." Kate's breath caught. Her throat tightened until swallowing hurt. Harlan's gaze went to Kate's hand. The ring was there. Kate could feel every eye in the room on it. The man held out his hand. "Master Sergeant Mason Briggs," he said. "Retired. Air Force Pararescue." No one moved. Kate stared at his hand for a long moment. Her mind tried to build a wall, tried to return to inventory lists and linen counts and dialysis transfers. The wall did not hold. She stood slowly, legs steady by force of will, and took his hand. Her grip was firm, controlled. "Mason," she said quietly. Briggs' eyes softened a fraction. "Danny Ortiz is alive," he said. "He has 2 kids. He texts me pictures of their soccer games like it is his job. He does that because of you." Something in Kate's face tightened a small fracture in the calm. She nodded once. "Good." Briggs looked around the room, taking in the stunned faces, the frozen posture of men who had laughed about strength over coffee. "One of the best combat medics I ever worked with," Briggs said, voice carrying. "I owe you a debt I cannot repay." Harlan's voice came out low and controlled. "Mercer, is this true?" Kate's eyes finally lifted to his. She did not give him the whole truth. She gave him the part that existed in this room. "Yes, sir," she said. The room stayed silent. Even Dylan did not try to speak. Harlan stood very still for a moment, then nodded once slowly, as if he were fitting a new piece into place. "Briggs," Harlan said, voice formal. "What brings you here?" Briggs kept his gaze on Kate. "I saw a roster," he said. "County EMS." Name rang a bell. I needed to know if it was her. Harlan's jaw flexed. "And now you do." Briggs nodded. He looked at Kate again. "I am not here to drag you," he said. "I am here to say thank you, and to tell you I am glad you are still breathing." Kate's mouth tightened. "I am fine." Briggs held her gaze like he could see the lie and chose not to press it. "If you ever need anything," he said, "you know how to reach me." Kate nodded once. "Thank you." Briggs lowered his hand and stepped back. He glanced around the room again, then returned his eyes to Harlan. "That is all," Briggs said. He turned and walked out with the same controlled stride he had entered with. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded too small for what had just happened. No one spoke. Harlan looked at Kate for a long moment, then said quietly, "My office." Kate did not argue. She followed him out of the briefing room as the crew watched in silence, eyes tracking the ring on her finger as if it were a flare. In the hallway, the fluorescent light buzzed above them. The station smelled like coffee and diesel, the same as always, but the air felt thinner, harder to breathe. Harlan opened his office door and stepped aside. Kate entered and stood by the chair. Harlan closed the door. He faced her clipboard set aside, hands empty now. How long, he asked. Kate kept her eyes on a spot on the wall. 6 years. Harlan's breath left him slowly. And you have been here for 2 years, letting them put you on the easy runs. Kate did not respond. Harlan's voice tightened. Why? Kate's gaze dropped to her hands. The titanium ring caught the lamplight, dull and scratched. Because I left that life, she said. Harlan leaned forward slightly. Why? Kate swallowed. Her voice was quiet. Because I needed to go home. Harlan held her eyes now. You come home after every shift here. Kate nodded once. That is the point. Silence pressed in again. Harlan did not soften, but his anger shifted into something else. Something that looked like reluctant respect. You saved a life on that bridge, he said. Kate's voice stayed flat. I did my job. Harlan shook his head slightly. No, he said. You did a job most of my people are not trained for. Kate did not answer. Harlan exhaled. People are going to ask questions, he said. They already are. Kate met his eyes. Let them. Harlan studied her for a long moment, then nodded once as if he had made a decision. All right, he said. Finish your shift. We will handle the rest as it comes. Kate nodded and turned toward the door. Harlan's voice stopped her. Mercer. She turned back. His eyes went to the ring again. You do not owe anyone your past, he said. But you also do not get to pretend you are less than what you are. Kate held his gaze expression steady, then gave a small nod and left the office. When she stepped back into the bay, the station noise resumed, but it did not feel the same. Conversations started too late and ended too early. Eyes lingered, then looked away. Dylan stood near Medic 9, hands shoved in his pockets, face tight with guilt and confusion. Kate walked past him without slowing. She opened the rig compartment and checked the trauma bag again. Not because it needed it, but because her hands needed something they could trust. The zipper rasped. The supplies were in place. The tourniquet sat folded and ready. She touched the ring once, then again, and forced her breathing to stay even. Outside traffic hissed along the service road, indifferent. Inside the station held its breath around her, as if the building itself was waiting to see who she would be when no one was laughing anymore. Kate kept moving. She closed the rig compartment with a soft click and walked to the sink to wash her hands even though they were already clean. The water ran hot. Steam rose. Her knuckles were faintly raw from scrubbing, but she did not slow down. She watched the soap swirl down the drain and felt the tightness in her chest ease by fractions. Behind her, the kitchenette was quieter than it had been in weeks. Even Jenkins had lost his appetite for commentary. Dylan stood near the coffee pot with his cup untouched, staring at a spot on the tile, like he had dropped something there and could not find it again. Captain Harlan came out of his office and crossed the bay without speaking. He did not address the room. He did not need to. His gaze slid over faces and landed on Kate with a measured steadiness that felt like a shield. Back to work, he said, calm and final. The station obeyed the way a room obeys a storm warning. Chairs scraped. Radios were checked. Cabinets were opened and shut. A few medics looked at Kate as they passed, then looked away too quickly. Dylan drifted toward her, hands in his pockets, shoulders pulled in. He stopped a few feet away, like he was unsure where the boundary was. Kate, he said softly. Kate dried her hands and hung the towel. She did not turn. Dylan cleared his throat. Briggs said you were night stalkers. That's real. Kate faced him, then eyes steady, expression flat. You needed it to be real to matter. Dylan flinched. No, that's not what I meant. Kate held his gaze until his confidence slipped again. Then mean what you say. Dylan swallowed. His voice dropped lower. I'm sorry, he repeated, and this time it sounded less like a transaction. Kate watched him for a beat, then turned away. She picked up the inventory sheet and walked back toward Medic 9. Her boots were quiet on the concrete. Dylan stood still behind her, like he was waiting for punishment that did not come. The shift dragged into afternoon. The calls were routine, the kind of calls that left no residue. A toddler with a fever, an elderly man who tripped on a rug and bruised his pride more than his hip. A college kid who drank too much and cried in the back of the rig, apologizing between retches. Kate treated them all with the same calm efficiency, but the station itself had changed. The air carried something new, attention made from questions no one wanted to say out loud. When Kate stepped into a room, voices softened. When she walked away, voices rose again in quick bursts, then died when she turned back. Near evening, Harlan pulled her into his office again. The blinds were still half closed. The lamp cast warm light over paperwork. Harlan did not offer a seat. Kate sat anyway, posture straight, hands resting on her thighs. "I am not going to interrogate you," Harlan said. Kate said nothing. Harlan leaned back. "But you need to understand how this works. County EMS is not a special operations team. We have protocols. We have liability. We have people who will call the state on us for less than what you did last night." Kate's eyes stayed on his. "He was dying." "I know," Harlan said. "And he's alive because you acted." Kate's fingers brushed the ring once, then stopped. She kept her hands still. Harlan watched that small motion, then continued. "I am going to back you, but I need you to stop letting people paint you into a corner. You are not some quiet kid they can assign to nursing homes because it makes them comfortable." Kate's mouth tightened. "Comfort keeps people alive, too." Harlan nodded once, as if he respected the deflection. "Fine, then use it. But do not pretend you are less than what you are. That is not humility. That is avoidance." Kate met his eyes without blinking. "I'm not looking for a spotlight." Harlan's voice softened slightly. "No, you're looking for peace." Kate did not answer. Harlan exhaled, then pushed a paper across the desk. A blank incident report form. "Fill this out. Every detail. Make it clean. If anyone comes for you, I want your facts ready." Kate took the paper. "Yes, sir." Harlan watched her for a long moment. "And Mercer," he added. Kate looked up. "Briggs showing up like that," Harlan said. "Careful, it shook the room. It shook you. If you need time, take it." Kate's face stayed calm. "I'm fine." Harlan did not argue. He nodded once and dismissed her with a tilt of his chin. Kate left the office and returned to the bay where the fluorescent lights made everything look a little too bright, a little too exposed. She filled out the report at the desk with quiet precision, every line straight, every word chosen. She did not mention fear. She did not mention memory. She wrote only what happened and why it happened. Dylan hovered near the doorway as if guarding the hall. Once he stepped forward like he wanted to speak, then stopped himself and turned away. Night fell. The station grew quiet again, the kind of quiet that made the radio feel heavier. Kate finished her paperwork and stood stretching her fingers briefly. The ring caught light and dulled it. A buzz came from her phone. The landlord again. A number. A due date. Kate stared at it for a second, then slid the phone away. A second buzz followed. Unknown number. Kate's throat tightened before she even opened it. No message this time. Just a missed call. The screen went dark again. Kate breathed in slowly and let it out. The station's heater kicked on air, rushing through vents. Somewhere in the building, someone laughed too loudly at a television show, the sound forced. Kate stood up and walked to the rig, opened a compartment, checked the trauma bag again. She didn't need to. Her hands needed something to do. She pulled out the tourniquet, tested it, checked the windlass. 3 seconds, back in. The bay door rattled slightly as wind hit it. Kate closed the compartment and leaned her shoulder against the rig eyes on the dark outside. She could see the faint glow of the city beyond the service road headlights moving like slow fireflies. Her fingers touched the ring once, then again. She let her hand fall. The dispatch tone hit at 9:14 p.m., not the single tone that meant routine. The station's speakers cracked with a rapid series that made everybody in the building tense at once. All units, the dispatcher said, voice controlled but tight. Structure collapse at Riverside construction site. Multiple workers trapped. Heavy machinery involved. Mass casualty declared. Fire and law en route. All available EMS respond. The station exploded into motion. Boots slammed the floor. Cabinet doors flew open. Radios clicked. Jackets were pulled on. Someone cursed as a strap snagged. Someone else shouted for extra trauma bags. Kate was already at Medic 9 hands, moving with an economy that made the chaos around her feel slower. She slung the trauma bag over her shoulder, grabbed additional tourniquets, checked the airway bag, then moved to the driver's side door. Dylan reached the rig a half-second after her breathing, hard, eyes wide. "You drive?" he blurted, as if volunteering could erase what he had said over coffee. Kate looked at him once. "You drive," she agreed. Dylan blinked surprised, then climbed in quickly. His hands shook as he shoved the key into the ignition. Captain Harlan stood at the bay door coat, already on radio in hand. He pointed at them. "Stage until you have command assignment. Keep your head. Do not freelance." "Yes, sir," Dylan shouted. Kate's eyes met Harlan's. She nodded once. Harlan's jaw tightened, then he nodded back, a silent exchange that carried more weight than words. The rig roared out into the night. Clarksville blurred by in streaks of streetlights and wet pavement. The siren carved a path through traffic. Dylan drove fast, but his movements lacked the swagger from earlier shifts. This speed was not performance. It was fear doing its best to be useful. Kate watched the road ahead, mind already building the scene again. Construction site, collapse, heavy machinery, multiple trapped, dust. Secondary collapse risk, crushing injuries, hemorrhage, airway compromise. She touched the ring once, then again, and her breathing slowed. The narrow channel opened in her mind, the one that made decisions feel clean. Radio traffic stacked like waves. Battalion 2 on scene. 4-story partial collapse. Multiple victims. Establishing command. Engine 7 requesting additional cribbing and heavy rescue. Medic units stage on the South Access Road. Hazmat en route for fuel concerns. Dylan's voice came tight over the radio. Medic 9 responding to personnel. Copy. Medic 9 dispatch replied. Proceed to staging. They turned onto Riverside Drive, then onto a service entrance that cut behind a row of warehouses. Floodlights from construction towers lit the sky like a stadium. Smoke or dust hung low over the site, turning the beams into pale columns. The smell hit them before they even parked. Concrete dust. It coated the air, chalky and dry, clinging to the inside of the throat. It mixed with diesel exhaust from heavy equipment and the sharp metallic smell of torn steel. They pulled into staging behind 2 other ambulances. Fire trucks were already positioned at angles, ladder lights blasting white across piles of rubble. A crane lay on its side, twisted, its long arm bent like a broken limb. Rebar jutted from concrete slabs in chaotic patterns, ribs exposed. Screaming echoed through the wreckage, thin and ragged, coming from places the eye could not immediately find. Kate stepped out of the rig, and the cold night air hit her face, but it was swallowed by dust and heat from floodlights. She scanned the site fast, eyes moving over hazards and movement and stillness. Firefighters swarmed, their reflective stripes flashing in the lights. Police pushed back civilians, their voices harsh, their flashlights cutting through the haze. A battalion chief stood near a command vehicle radio at his mouth, trying to coordinate. His posture was tight, the tension visible in his shoulders. Too many variables. Not enough time. Kate moved toward him, not running, but cutting through people with purpose. Dylan followed, trauma bag bouncing at his side. A firefighter at the caution tape lifted a hand. "You need to stay in staging." Kate did not slow. "I need assignment." The firefighter looked toward command, then stepped aside reluctantly. Dylan hesitated at the tape like it might bite him. Kate went through. Dylan followed. At the command vehicle, the battalion chief looked up, eyes scanning Kate's uniform patch, then Dylan's, then the bags. "You Medic 9, he snapped. "Yes," Chief Dylan said. Kate spoke instead, voice level. "Where is your triage area?" The chief's gaze flicked to her, surprised by the calm in her tone. "We're setting it by the south fence. We have multiple trapped. We need red tags prioritized. Heavy rescue is trying to stabilize the west wall." Kate nodded once. "I'm going in." The chief's eyes widened. "No, you're not." Kate looked at him, expression unreadable. "People are bleeding under concrete." The chief's jaw tightened. "It is not safe." Kate's eyes moved past him to the debris field. A slab the size of a car sat angled, one end propped on twisted steel. Under it, a man's arm reached out, fingers clawing at dust. A firefighter knelt near it, shouting, but he did not go closer. Kate's voice stayed steady. I need 2 medics with me and a rescue escort. I will not compromise your safety, but I'm not staying behind tape while they die. The chief hesitated, then spoke into his radio. Heavy rescue. I need escort for a medic into the debris field. We have possible survivable entrapment. A voice crackled back, strained. Copy, stand by. Kate turned to Dylan. Tourniquets ready. Extra gauze. Start your radio log. If I tell you to call for air, you do it. Dylan swallowed. Air like life flight. Kate's eyes stayed on the rubble. Air like whoever can land. Dylan nodded, unsure if he was agreeing or just obeying. A firefighter in a different helmet approached, face smeared with dust, eyes sharp. I'm your escort, he said. Name's Harper. Stay in my steps. Kate nodded. Lead. They moved into the debris field. The ground shifted under boots, loose chunks rolling. Dust puffed with each step, clouding the air. Floodlights cast harsh shadows that made holes look deeper than they were. Twisted metal caught sleeves. Rebar snagged gear. Kate moved low, balanced stepping, where Harper stepped, her eyes reading load-bearing points by instinct. She had seen unstable terrain before, not like this, not with this many people watching. A scream cut through the noise, close now. Harper pointed. Over there, a man was pinned under a slab, legs, trapped concrete pressing down on his thighs. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading into dust. His face was white, lips pale. His eyes darted wildly. Help, he rasped. My legs. I can't feel my legs. Kate dropped to her knees beside him. Dust coated her sleeves immediately. She did not waste a second. Hey, she said, voice close and calm. I'm Kate. Look at me. His eyes locked on her, desperate. Do not look at your legs, she said. Look at my face. Stay with me. She reached for his thigh and felt wet warmth under her glove. Arterial bleed. Fast. Tourniquet, she said, hand out. Dylan shoved one into her palm, his breathing hard. Kate slid the tourniquet high on the man's thigh above where the blood was coming from. She cinched it down, pulled the strap tight, then cranked the windlass with steady force. The man screamed, body jerking, but the bleeding slowed, then stopped. Kate locked the windlass and secured it without looking. Good, she murmured, not to praise, but to anchor him. That is pressure. That is saving you. She checked his other leg. Another bleed. Less severe, but still bad. She packed gauze hard into the wound, then wrapped it tight, hands moving fast, precise. Dylan hovered, eyes wide. We don't carry blood, he blurted, voice strained like he needed to confess. Kate did not look up. Then we carry time. Start a line. Dylan fumbled with an IV kit, hands shaking. He tried once and missed. Kate's voice cut through him. Breathe. Find it. Dylan swallowed, tried again, and hit. His eyes widened like he couldn't believe his own hands. Hang fluids, Kate said, wide open. Dylan connected the saline and opened the clamp fully. The bag began to empty, a small, clear river running into a man whose blood had already left. Kate checked the patient's pulse. Thready, rapid. She leaned in closer. What's your name? Evan, he whispered. Evan, Kate repeated. You're going to stay awake for me. Keep talking. Tell me where you're from. Evan's eyes fluttered. Georgia, he said, voice breaking. I'm from Georgia. Kate's fingers paused for half a heartbeat, then continued pressing gauze, adjusting the wrap. Her face did not change, but something in her eyes went distant for a fraction of a second, like a door had opened in her mind, and she had shut it again just as fast. Okay, she said softly. Georgia. Tell me your town. Evan swallowed. Savannah. Kate nodded once. Savannah is beautiful. I need you to tell me what you were building tonight. Evan tried to laugh, and it came out as a cough. 4th floor, concrete pour, then it just fell. His voice faded at the end. Kate touched his cheek with the back of her glove, grounding him. Stay with me. Above them, the debris creaked, a deep shifting sound that made Harper stiffen. Secondary collapse risk. Harper warned, eyes scanning the slab overhead. Kate looked up quickly, assessing. The slab above Evan was angled but stable for now, held by twisted steel and a chunk of intact column. It could shift. It could kill all of them. Kate's voice stayed calm. "We need a lift point and cribbing. Get rescue here now," Harper shouted into his radio. "Heavy rescue medic has pinned patient with hemorrhage controlled. Need lift and cribbing at my location." Static, then a reply. "Copy. On the way." Kate looked at Dylan. "Call command. Tell them red tag. Immediate extrication. Oi. Request air." Dylan blinked. "Air is going to land here." Kate's eyes stayed on Evan. "Say the words." Dylan grabbed his radio with both hands like praying. "Command Medic 9. We have red tag hemorrhage tourniquet applied shock signs pinned under slab. Request air medevac." The battalion chief's voice crackled back. "Copy. Air request received. Stand by." Evan's breathing turned shallow, his eyes fluttered. Kate leaned in so close, her helmet light reflected in his pupils. "Evan, look at me." His eyes fought to stay open. "You are not going to sleep," Kate said, voice firm, not loud. "You are going to stay here with me." Evan swallowed. "It hurts." "I know," Kate said. "Keep talking. Tell me your kid's name." Evan blinked, confused. I don't have kids." "Then tell me your mom's name," Kate said. Evan's lips trembled. Donna, Kate repeated. "Donna wants you to come home." Evan's eyes tightened with tears. "Yeah." Kate's hand stayed on his shoulder. Steady pressure, not comfort command. Heavy rescue arrived with cribbing and a hydraulic jack. 2 firefighters moved in faces set, movements controlled. They wedged wood blocks under the slab's edge, then began to lift millimeter by millimeter. The slab groaned. Dust fell in thin streams. Harper's head snapped up. "Watch that wall," he warned. Kate held still, eyes on the lift. She did not move away. She did not flinch. She adjusted her position so if the slab shifted, she could pull Evan's shoulders back. "Slow," she said. The firefighter on the jack nodded, sweat cutting clean lines through dust on his face. The slab lifted enough to create space at Evan's thighs. "On my count," Kate said. "We pull him straight. No twisting." She looked at Dylan, then Harper, then the firefighters. Their eyes were on her now, waiting. 1, Kate said. 2, 3. They pulled together, controlled, careful. Evan screamed, then the sound turned into a gasp as his body came free. They slid him onto a backboard, secured straps quickly. Kate kept pressure on the dressings and checked the tourniquet again. "Good," she murmured more to herself than anyone. They moved Evan toward the triage area, stepping carefully over rubble. Dylan carried the IV bag high, keeping flow. His face was tight-focused, and for the first time, he looked like he understood that strength could be quiet. At the south fence, triage had formed into a rough line. Red tags on stretchers. Yellow tags sitting on the ground, grimacing, holding limbs. Green tags, standing and wandering, eyes wide, dust-coated shock visible in their posture. The battalion chief stood at the center radio, glued to his mouth, face drawn. A paramedic from another unit tried to hand him information, but he barely absorbed it. Kate rolled Evan into the red area and barked instructions to a nurse who had arrived from a nearby clinic. "Keep pressure here," she said, placing the nurse's hands on Evan's dressing. "Do not remove it. Do not peek. If bleeding breaks through, add more on top." The nurse's eyes were wide. She nodded. Kate turned back toward the debris field without waiting for anyone to tell her she could. Dylan grabbed her sleeve. "Kate," he said, voice strained. "You can't keep going in there." Kate looked at his hand on her sleeve. Dylan released it immediately, as if burned. "We can," Kate said quietly. "If we do it right." Harper appeared again. "We got another trapped." "Deeper," he said. "Less stable." Kate nodded. "Show me." They moved back into the wreckage. This time the sound was different. Not screaming, moaning, low and steady, like someone had been forced to accept pain as permanent. A worker lay pinned under twisted steel torso, trapped face smeared with dust and blood. His eyes were open. His breathing was shallow. A beam pressed into his abdomen. Kate knelt beside him and scanned, hands moving fast. No visible massive bleed, but his abdomen was distended, tender. Internal bleeding likely. The beam could be tampinating. Moving it wrong could kill him. Harper cursed softly. Heavy rescue is working, but that beam is part of the load. Kate looked at the beam, then the surrounding structure. She could see where the weight transferred where it wanted to fall. Floodlights made shadows dance across cracks in concrete like veins. She spoke into her radio voice calm. Command, I need a structural assessment on the west quadrant. Beam pinning a patient may be load-bearing. The chief's reply was clipped. Copy. Engineer en route. Keep personnel out of unstable zones. Kate's eyes stayed on the patient. I'm already in it, she murmured, but she did not say it into the radio. She leaned close to the patient. What's your name? Luis, he whispered, voice barely there. Luis, Kate repeated. I need you to keep breathing. Slow. In through your nose if you can. Luis tried, grimaced. Kate checked his pulse. Rapid, weak. Dylan crouched on the other side, face pale. What do we do? Kate's gaze stayed on the beam. We wait for rescue. We support him. We do not move that beam until they tell us it is safe. Luis's eyes flickered. Am I gonna die? He whispered. The question cut through the noise like a knife. Kate held his gaze. Her face did not soften, but her voice did. You're here with us, she said. You're not alone. Luis swallowed. Tell my wife. Kate placed a hand on his shoulder, firm. You tell her yourself, she said, and the words came out clean, practiced, not a promise, not a lie, a direction. Above them, something shifted again. A deep creak. Dust falling. Harper stiffened and looked up. Then the sound came. Rotors. At first, it was distant, a low rhythmic thump that could have been heavy machinery. Then it grew doubling, thickening, pounding the air into vibration. Everyone stopped. Even the screaming seemed to pause for a breath. Floodlights caught a shape descending through the dust cloud, dark and solid, like a piece of night cutting into the scene. The wind from the blades slapped dust into spirals. Loose paper and caution tape snapped and whipped. Firefighters raised forearms to shield their faces. The Black Hawk lowered fast and controlled onto a clear patch near the South Access Road 50 yards from the collapse. Its landing skids kissed dirt and gravel, and the ground trembled. Kate's body went still. Her throat tightened. Her skin remembered rotor wash like it was a bruise. The side door slid open. 2 flight medics jumped down, moving with clipped precision, carrying packs that looked heavier than county gear and worn like they weighed nothing. Then a man stepped down behind them, flight suit, helmet in hand, officer insignia visible under floodlights. His posture was calm in a way that did not come from confidence. It came from repetition. He walked straight toward command. The battalion chief stared at him, stunned, radio still at his mouth. We didn't request military assistance, he shouted over the rotor noise. The officer's eyes swept the scene once, then locked on the chief. His voice carried without effort. Captain Rowan Ellis. 1/60th, he said. We received a request for urgent medevac support and additional medical assets. The chief's mouth opened, then closed. From who? Ellis's gaze shifted past him, scanning the debris field, the triage line, the medics moving like ants beneath floodlights. Then his eyes landed on Kate. He did not hesitate. Master Sergeant Briggs put the call in, Ellis said, still speaking to the chief but no longer looking at him. He said there was a medic on scene who might need extraction support. The chief followed Ellis's gaze. Kate was kneeling in dust beside Luis, one hand on his shoulder, eyes on the beam pinning him. Her gloves were smeared. Her sleeves were gray with concrete powder. Her face was calm in the middle of screaming and collapse. Ellis started walking toward her. Harper saw him first and shifted aside. Dylan's head snapped up, eyes wide, like he had just realized the sky had opinions. Ellis stopped a few feet from Kate. The rotor wash pressed her hair back from her face. Dust swirled around them like smoke. Sergeant Mercer, Ellis said. The words landed heavy. Kate's jaw tightened. For a fraction of a second, she could have denied it again. She could have stayed small. She could have claimed county protocols and civilian life and quiet. Instead, she looked up at him and nodded once. Sir, she said. Dylan's face drained of color. Harper stared like he had stepped into a story he did not understand. Ellis crouched beside Kate, assessing Luis with quick eyes and skilled hands. Pinned torso, he said, reading the situation. Likely abdominal injury. Kate nodded. Beam is load-bearing. We're holding until structural. Ellis glanced at her, a faint recognition in his eyes that felt older than this scene. Good call. He spoke to his flight medics without turning his head. Get the litter and the advance kit. We're going to need access as soon as rescue gives us clearance. The flight medics moved immediately. Ellis looked back at Kate. How many critical? 3 confirmed red so far, Kate said. Possibly more trapped in the west quadrant. 1 hemorrhage already packaged en route to triage. Ellis's gaze flicked to Dylan. You her partner? Dylan swallowed. Yes, sir. Ellis's eyes held him for a beat. Not cruel, not kind, simply measuring. Stay useful, he said, and looked away. Dylan nodded too fast. Yes, sir. The engineer arrived with heavy rescue. The battalion chief moved closer, now his posture changing, as if the presence of the Black Hawk forced the scene into a new frame. Captain, the chief said to Ellis, voice tight. We have a triage corridor established. We can clear a landing zone, but we need to maintain safety. Ellis nodded once. You're doing fine, he said, and it sounded less like reassurance and more like a statement of fact. We'll integrate. Keep your perimeter. Heavy rescue stabilized the beam with cribbing and supports. The engineer signaled. Okay, Harper shouted. We can lift on my mark. Slow. Kate leaned close to Luis again. We're going to move you, she said. It will hurt. You stay with me. Luis's eyes were glassy. He nodded faintly. Ellis positioned himself opposite Kate. 2 firefighters took the lift points. The flight medics slid equipment into reach. Kate counted again, voice cutting clean through rotor noise. 1, 2, 3. The beam lifted a fraction. Luis's body shifted. His breath hitched. Kate's hands stayed steady as she guided him onto the backboard. Ellis supported the torso, protecting the spine. They moved as a unit, smooth, controlled. Luis was free. Kate checked his pulse. Still there, thin. They moved him toward triage flight medics, taking over the carry with practiced coordination. Dylan held the IV line again, but this time his hands were steadier. At triage, Ellis spoke with the battalion chief, then turned to Kate. We're taking the hemorrhage patient first, Ellis said. Then we come back for this one. Kate nodded. She did not ask permission. She did not thank him. She simply worked. The first patient, Evan, was loaded onto the Black Hawk with a speed that made the county stretcher transfer feel slow. The flight medics secured him monitored lines and signaled to Ellis. The rotor noise rose as the aircraft lifted dust, blasting outward lights, washing the site in red pulses. Kate watched it rise into the night for half a second. Her throat tightened. Her body remembered the feeling of leaving a scene behind the weight of lives in a cabin. Then she turned back to the rubble. There were still voices calling from inside. Kate moved with Harper, again deeper now, toward the west quadrant where the collapse was worst. The floodlights did not reach as well there. Shadows pooled between slabs. The air smelled sharper, like something electrical burned under concrete. They found another worker trapped in a pocket of space, face bleeding, arm bent, wrong, breathing rapid with panic. Kate dropped beside him. Hey, she said, look at me. He stared at her wild. Breathe, she commanded. In, out. You're going to listen to me. Her hands checked airway circulation, the rhythm of his chest. No immediate life threat beyond shock and pain. Yellow tag, but could turn red if the pocket shifted. She marked him, then signaled for a rescue team to extract when safe. Dylan followed her step for step, now no jokes, no commentary, only movement. When she pointed, he moved. When she spoke, he listened. The Black Hawk returned 12 minutes later, rotors roaring back over the site, dust spiraling again. It settled into the cleared zone with the same controlled aggression. Ellis stepped out and came straight to Kate. His eyes were sharp, face unreadable. You still got it, he said, voice carrying just enough to be heard over the noise. Kate's mouth tightened. I never lost it. Ellis looked past her to the debris, then back. How many more? 2 likely trapped, Kate said. 1 pocket survivable. One unknown. Ellis nodded once. Show me. Kate led him in. The presence of Ellis and the flight medics changed how people moved. Not because the military was magic, but because discipline was contagious. Commands were shorter, radios were cleaner. Hands stopped hovering and started doing. Together, they pulled another worker out of a narrow void, packaged him, and moved him to the aircraft. His vitals were unstable, but his airway held. His eyes were open. He gripped Kate's sleeve weakly as they lifted him. "Don't leave," he whispered. Kate leaned close. "I'm here," she said. "You're going." The second liftoff was faster, the aircraft rising and vanishing into the night, its lights shrinking over the river. By the time the debris field quieted, the screaming had softened into moans, then into exhausted silence. Firefighters sat on curbs with their helmets off. Police kept the perimeter, their voices lower now. Dust settled slowly, coating everything like ash. Kate stood near the command vehicle, pulling off her gloves. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was faster than she wanted. Captain Harlan arrived from another route, walking into the floodlights like a man entering a scene he had dreamed about. He looked at the wreckage, then at the triage corridor, then at Kate. For the first time, his face showed something open. "That was extraordinary," he said. Kate shook her head slightly. "That was work." Ellis walked up behind her helmet under his arm, face calm. He looked at Harlan as if evaluating a new piece of terrain. "Your medic coordinated multi-patient extrication under unstable collapse," Ellis said. "She saved lives tonight." Harlan's jaw tightened. He nodded once. "I saw." Ellis turned his gaze back to Kate. "You disappear and still end up in the middle of it," he said, voice quieter now. Kate did not answer. Ellis held her eyes for a moment, then stepped back. "We're transporting two," he said. "County trauma is spinning up." Kate nodded. "I'm going with Luis if there's room." Ellis watched her. "There's room." Dylan stood a few feet away, dust-coated eyes, red-rimmed. He looked like he wanted to speak, but did not know how to place words in this kind of air. Kate did not look at him. She adjusted her bag, checked her supplies, and moved toward the aircraft. As she climbed onto the Black Hawk, the cabin smell hit her. Fuel, oil, canvas, metal warmed by bodies. The scent was so familiar, it made her throat tighten again. She sat beside the stretcher where Luis lay strapped down, eyes half open. The flight medic across from her checked monitors with calm hands. The aircraft vibrated under them, alive. Ellis leaned into the cabin doorway. His eyes met hers steady. "You good?" he asked, and it sounded like a question that held more than one meaning. Kate's fingers brushed her ring once, then fell away. "I'm working," she replied. Ellis nodded and stepped back. The door slid shut. The cabin dimmed. The rotors rose into a roar that swallowed everything. The Black Hawk lifted. Clarksville fell away beneath them in patches of light and dark. The river reflected floodlights like broken glass. The construction site shrank into a harsh, bright scar in the night. Kate watched Luis's chest rise and fall. His pulse was still rapid, but present. She adjusted oxygen, kept pressure on dressings, monitored his skin color. She did not allow her mind to widen. At County Trauma, the landing was quick. Doors opened. Cold air rushed in. The trauma team waited, faces set, hands ready. They took Luis from the cabin and rolled him into bright white corridors. Kate followed, stepping from rotor wash into antiseptic light. Inside the hospital, everything smelled clean and sharp. The walls were too white. The floor reflected overhead lights. It made the blood on her sleeves look darker. A surgeon glanced at her, then at the patient's tags, then back at her. "You're the medic from the collapse," he said, voice brisk. Kate nodded. "Yes, doctor." The surgeon's eyes moved over her face, then past her, as if he were seeing someone else standing there. "Good work," he said, then turned away and disappeared into the trauma bay with his team. Kate stepped back into the hallway and leaned against the wall, breathing slow. Her hands were steady, but her ribs felt tight, like something inside her wanted to crack open. The fluorescent hum was softer here, but it still existed. The hospital had its own version of the station's noise. Footsteps approached. Kate did not look up at first. A familiar presence stopped beside her. Captain Rowan Ellis stood with his helmet under his arm, flight suit dusty at the cuffs. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp in a way that made the hallway feel smaller. He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "You disappeared after Kabul." The words landed soft, but they carried weight. Ellis did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The hospital hallway was quiet enough that even the air vents felt loud. Kate kept her shoulder against the wall. Her uniform was streaked with dust and blood sleeves, stiff where it had dried. Under the bright lights, her skin looked pale, almost washed out, like the hospital was trying to turn her into something sterile. She did not look at him right away. Her eyes stayed on the double doors at the end of the hall, where Luis had disappeared into surgery. The doors swung once, then settled. The silence returned. "I had to," she said. Ellis watched her with the patience of someone who had learned not to rush the truth out of a person. His helmet rested under his arm. His flight suit still carried the faint smell of fuel, a smell Kate had tried to forget and never could. "People said you went quiet," Ellis said. "No calls, no response, no goodbye." Kate's jaw tightened. "I wasn't good at goodbye." Ellis nodded once, as if he accepted that. "Briggs called me," he said. "He said you were on a civilian scene and you were doing what you always do." Kate let out a slow breath. She could feel her heartbeat against the inside of her ribs. It had been steady all night. It was still steady. That was the problem. Her body stayed calm even when something inside her screamed. Ellis stepped a half-pace closer, careful not to crowd her. "You did good work," he said. Kate's mouth tightened. "Luis is still in surgery." Ellis did not argue. He got there alive. Kate stared at the doors again. Her fingers drifted toward the titanium ring on her hand, then stopped. She held her hands still flat against her thighs, as if she could pin the habit there. Ellis's voice dropped. "Why did you leave?" Kate blinked once. The question was simple. The answer never was. She kept her eyes on the floor for a moment, on the glossy tile that reflected her boots, the faint scuffs, the dried dust. Then she looked up at Ellis. "There was a day," she said, and her voice was quiet, even like she was reading a report. "4 wounded. We had minutes, not hours." Ellis's face did not change. His eyes did a fraction softer, a fraction older. Kate continued, words coming in short pieces, as if she could only carry them one at a time. "I worked the closest one first. Sucking chest wound. Airway compromised. I got him breathing. I got him stable enough to move. I turned to the next." Her throat tightened. She swallowed once hard. "Too late," she said. Then the next. Too late again. Ellis exhaled slowly, the sound almost lost. Kate's gaze went distant, not to the hallway, not to the doors, but to something behind her eyes. "The 4th was a woman," she said. 23. From Georgia." The word Georgia hung in the air like smoke. Kate felt it in her chest, the way she had felt it earlier when Evan said it in dust. "She asked me if she was going to make it," Kate said. Ellis did not speak. Kate's lips pressed together. For a second, she looked like she might stop. Then she kept going anyway. "I told her yes," she said. "She died 30 seconds later." Her voice did not break. Her eyes did not fill. The emotion was there, but it lived under the surface like a river under ice. Ellis shifted his weight, just a small movement. "You did what you could," he said. Kate's head tipped back against the wall, and she closed her eyes for a moment. It wasn't enough. Ellis waited, letting the silence hold the space between them. Kate opened her eyes again. After that, she said they offered another rotation, another mission, another set of bodies. I could feel myself turning into something that didn't belong anywhere except a scene. Ellis's gaze stayed steady. "So you walked." Kate nodded once. "I thought if I worked in a place where the stakes felt smaller, I could save more people. I thought if I traded war for county calls, I could breathe." Ellis's mouth tightened, not judgment, just recognition. "And did it work?" Kate looked at the surgery doors. "People still die," she said. "They just die under different lights." Ellis was quiet for a beat, then spoke softly. "You came anyway. Tonight, you came." Kate's eyes stayed on the doors. "It's the only thing I know how to do." Ellis's helmet shifted slightly under his arm as he adjusted his grip. "There's a difference between knowing how to do it and choosing to," he said. You chose. Kate did not answer. She did not know what to do with that. A nurse walked past them briskly, eyes flicking over Kate's uniform and then away. The hospital kept moving. The world did not pause to honor pain. It only asked you to keep going. Ellis reached into a pocket and pulled out a small card white with printed numbers. He held it out. If you ever want to come back, he said, Tomai. Kate looked at the card, then at Ellis. She did not take it right away. Ellis's voice stayed level, and if you stay where you are, then stay. But do not let anyone shrink you to fit their comfort. Kate stared at the card a moment longer, then took it. Her fingers brushed his quick contact and then the card was in her pocket. Thank you, sir, she said. Ellis nodded once. Get some rest, he replied, and then he stepped back, turned and walked down the hallway with the quiet stride of someone who carried the sky on his shoulders and did not complain about the weight. Kate stayed where she was, the wall cool against her back, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant roll of a gurney. After a long time, the doors finally opened. A surgeon stepped out, mask pulled down, cap pushed back. His eyes found Kate. His expression was tired, but relieved. He made it through the first part, the surgeon said. He's stable for now. Kate's breath left her slowly. She nodded once, as if stability was a number on a monitor she could trust. Good, she said. The surgeon studied her face, then glanced at her sleeve. You should get cleaned up, he said. Someone will want your report. Kate nodded again. Yes, doctor. She walked out of the trauma area and into the night. The hospital parking lot was cold. The air smelled clean compared to the construction site, but the memory of dust still clung to her throat. She sat in her truck for a long time with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring out at the glow of the emergency entrance. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit the screen. Proud of you. That was hard. You did not run. Kate stared at it. She did not reply right away. Her thumb hovered. She set the phone down. The next morning, Station 9 was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. When Kate walked in, the usual banter did not rise. The coffee pot still gurgled. The fluorescent lights still buzzed. But the men at the counter stopped talking as if someone had cut a wire. Dylan stood near the sink with his coffee, both hands around the cup, like he needed warmth. Calder was by the whiteboard, reading call stats he already knew. Thompson sat at the table, eyes on his phone, not scrolling, just staring. Captain Harlan stood in the bay with a clipboard. He looked up when Kate entered. Mercer, he said. Kate nodded. Sir. Harlan's voice carried just enough to fill the room. Conference room. 2 minutes. No one argued. No one joked. They filed in like they were walking into weather. Kate sat near the back by instinct. She preferred edges. Edges meant exits. Dylan sat 2 seats away, shoulders tense. Harlan waited until the room settled, then spoke without clearing his throat. Last night, he said, we ran a mass casualty under unstable collapse. We had multiple trapped, multiple critical, and limited assets. He looked around the room, eyes steady. We performed well enough to keep people alive until we could get them higher care. He paused, then continued, tone sharpening slightly. But there are gaps. There are procedures some of you have never drilled under pressure. There are decisions some of you hesitated to make because you were afraid of policy. Hesitation costs time. Time costs blood. No one moved. Harlan's gaze shifted to Kate, then away again. We will be implementing new training, he said. High-intensity scenarios, advanced medical procedures, command and control under chaos. We are going to practice until you can do it in your sleep. Thompson raised his eyebrows slightly. Calder's posture stiffened. Harlan's eyes cut through them. This is not optional. Dylan swallowed. He glanced at Kate once, then looked away. Harlan placed his clipboard on the table and folded his hands. Mercer will lead it. The room shifted. A few heads turned toward Kate. Kate's throat tightened. Sir, she said, careful, I'm not sure. Harlan held her gaze. I am, he replied. You have skills this department needs. Kate felt eyes on her ring, on her hands, on her face. She forced herself to keep breathing. Yes, sir, she said finally. Harlan nodded once, satisfied. Good. When the meeting ended, people stood slowly as if leaving too fast would look like fear. Dylan lingered by the door until everyone else filtered out. Kate gathered her papers and walked toward the bay. Dylan followed. "Kate," he said. She kept walking. "Kate, please." "Dylan," said voice rough. She stopped near Medic 9 and turned. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Dylan swallowed hard. "I owe you an apology," he said. Kate waited. Dylan's voice trembled slightly as he forced himself to speak without hiding behind jokes. "I said women don't have the strength for this job. I said it like it was science, like it was truth." Kate watched him silent. Dylan's jaw tightened. "I was wrong," he said, "and I was loud about it. I made you carry that in the same room where you were doing everything right." Kate held his gaze. She did not soften. She did not attack. Dylan's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry." The apology hung between them, raw and unpolished. Kate studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Apology accepted," she said. Dylan's eyes flickered with relief, then pain. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Kate did not answer right away. Then she nodded small. "Why did you stay?" Dylan asked. "Why come here after what you were doing?" Kate looked past him at the bay door, at the rigs, sitting quiet and ready at the way county life tried to feel normal, even when it wasn't. "Because here," she said, "I go home." Dylan's eyes softened. "Yeah," he whispered. Kate turned away, ending the conversation with motion the way she always had. The first training session started 2 days later. Harlan cleared the back room and dragged in a training mannequin, old and scuffed but usable. He had the supply tech bring extra equipment from storage. A couple of firefighters from the collapse volunteered to observe curiosity and respect mixing on their faces. Kate stood at the front of the room with her arms crossed. Her uniform was clean today. Her hair was pulled back tight. The ring was on her finger, dull under fluorescent light. Dylan sat in the front row, posture straight, eyes fixed. Calder sat behind him, arms folded, expression guarded. Thompson and Jenkins sat together, quieter than usual. Kate did not smile. She did not introduce herself. They knew her name now. She picked up a catheter needle and held it where everyone could see. "This can save a life in under a minute," she said, voice calm. "Only if you do not hesitate." No one spoke. Kate placed the needle down and tapped the mannequin's chest with 2 fingers. "Landmarks matter," she continued. "If you do not know them, you do not guess. You practice until your hands know where to go." Dylan raised his hand halfway, then lowered it as if he remembered who he used to be. Kate looked at him anyway. "Ask," she said. Dylan cleared his throat. "Why didn't they teach us this in school?" he asked. Kate's gaze held on him for a beat. "Because most instructors never did it under real pressure," she said. The room went still. Kate did not linger on the statement. She moved on. She showed them the technique, slow at first, then faster. She corrected hand placement. She corrected angle. She corrected the way people held their breath as if oxygen was a privilege. "Hesitation kills," she said again, not as a slogan, but as a description. When she called Dylan up to practice first, his hands shook. "Breathe," Kate said, voice even. "Find your landmark." Dylan swallowed. He placed 2 fingers where she had shown him. He looked up at her like he wanted permission. Kate did not give permission. She gave command. "Now." Dylan drove the needle in, hesitant, then more firm. The mannequin's built-in sound effect released a hiss. Dylan flinched, then exhaled. Kate nodded once. "Better," she said. Again. He did it again. His hands steadied by the 3rd time. Sweat gathered at his hairline, not from the effort, but from the pressure of being watched and corrected. Calder went next. His pride fought his fear in his posture. His first attempt was too high. Kate stopped him with a single look. "That is how you miss," she said. Calder's jaw clenched. "I've been doing this 15 years. Kate's voice stayed calm. "Then you have 15 years of habits," she replied. "Some of them will get someone killed." Calder stared at her. The room held its breath. Then Calder lowered his eyes and tried again. Slower. Cleaner. He hit the landmark. Kate nodded once. "Good," she said. By the end of the session, every medic in the room had performed the procedure multiple times. Their hands were tired. Their faces were serious. The laughter that used to fill the station had been replaced by something heavier and more useful. Afterward, as people filed out, a firefighter named Harper lingered near the door. "You were different out there," Harper said quietly. Kate looked at him. "Out where?" Harper's eyes flicked toward the bay, toward the rigs, toward the memory of dust. "In the collapse," he said. "You took command like it was normal." Kate's expression did not change. "It was necessary." Harper nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "It was." He hesitated, then added, "We'd follow you again." Kate held his gaze for a second, then nodded once, and Harper left. The training continued over the next weeks. Twice a week, Kate ran scenarios that made men sweat through their shirts and curse under their breath. She built problems that forced decisions. She forced communication to become short and clear. She made them practice until their bodies stopped fighting the stress and started using it. Harlan sat in the back, sometimes taking notes. Not because he doubted her, because he was learning and he was not too proud to admit it. Dylan stopped joking. He started asking questions. He started staying late to practice IV starts on the mannequin's rubber arm until his fingers stopped fumbling. One evening, after a rough drill, Dylan sat on the bay floor near Medic 9, back against a tire, exhausted. Kate was repacking equipment when he spoke. "I used to think strength meant you could carry the most," Dylan said quietly. Kate kept packing, not looking at him. "It helps," Dylan nodded. "But that's not what saved those people," he said. "You did. With your head. With your hands." Kate zipped a bag and latched it. "With everyone moving," she replied. Dylan's eyes stayed on her. "You make it hard to hide behind excuses," he said. Kate glanced at him once. "Good." The county held a ceremony a month after the collapse. It was in a conference room at EMS headquarters, too bright, too clean, filled with chairs lined up in neat rows. Medics in uniform filled the room. Firefighters stood along the wall. A couple of hospital staff members showed up in scrubs. Local officials sat in the front, smiling like they understood. Kate stood near the back, by instinct uncomfortable in a dress uniform that felt tighter than her work shirt. The ring was on her finger. The titanium looked dull under the overhead lights. Captain Harlan stood near the podium, face-set posture, formal. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of authority he saved for scenes. "It is rare," he said, "that we see someone redefine what capability looks like under pressure." Kate kept her eyes on the floor. Harlan continued, "It is rarer still that we get to learn from it." He looked up, eyes finding Kate. "Staff Sergeant Kate Mercer." The room shifted. People turned. A soft murmur rippled. Kate's throat tightened. She did not move. Harlan's voice stayed steady. "For life-saving actions during the Riverside collapse and for extraordinary service to this county, we recognize you." Applause rose. It filled the room, loud and sincere. Kate felt it hit her like heat and did not know what to do with it. She walked forward because her legs knew how to obey. Harlan met her at the front with a framed certificate. He handed it to her with both hands like it mattered. "Thank you," he said quietly so only she could hear. Kate nodded once. "Yes, sir." Harlan leaned slightly closer. "We are creating a new position," he said. "Lead field instructor, protocol development, advanced training for the county." Kate's eyes flicked up, surprised. Harlan's voice did not soften. "You will take it." The room watched. Dylan stood near the side posture, straight eyes fixed on Kate, like he was seeing the result of something he helped break and then helped repair. Kate looked down at the certificate, then up at the faces in the room, people who used to laugh, people who used to look away, people who now looked at her with respect, that felt almost heavy. She nodded once. "I'll take it," she said. The applause rose again, louder. In the back of the room, a man stood with his arms crossed, face calm. Mason Briggs. When Kate's eyes found him, he gave a single nod. Not celebration, not pity, just acknowledgement. Kate nodded back. After the ceremony, people lined up to shake her hand. Some thanked her. Some apologized. Some tried to say too much and stumbled over their words. Kate accepted what was offered without performing emotion. Her calm remained, but something inside her shifted, subtle and real. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut across the parking lot in orange light. Kate stood alone for a moment with the certificate in her hands, the glass frame catching sunlight. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ellis. Heard about the position. Well deserved. Kate stared at the message, then typed a reply. Thank you, sir. She sent it and put the phone away. That evening back at Station 9, she walked into her small office space, a converted storage nook with a desk and shelves. Harlan had cleared it for her and left a set of training manuals on the desk. Someone had put a new whiteboard on the wall. Kate sat down and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was the old photo she carried, creased, faded. 4 people in tan uniforms. Dusty smiles, harsh light. Kate held it for a long moment, then set it on the desk. She opened another small box she kept locked in her truck for years and had finally brought inside. Patches, dog tags, a medal she never wore. The items looked smaller in her hands than they had in her head. She did not cry. She did not speak. She simply left the box open. A knock came at the doorframe. Dylan stood there hesitant. Instructor, he said awkward, then flinched as if the word felt too formal. Kate looked up. What she asked. Dylan held out a small laminated card. I printed the new protocol draft you mentioned, he said. I thought you'd want a copy. Kate took it. Their fingers brushed. Dylan pulled his hand back quickly. Thanks, Kate said. Dylan nodded and stepped away. Kate leaned back in her chair and stared at the ring on her hand. For years, touching it twice had been a switch, a way to turn off feeling and turn on function. It had kept her alive. It had kept other people alive. She lifted her hand and looked at the scratches, the worn edges. Then she lowered it and let it rest on the desk without touching it. The radio crackled in the bay. Medic 9, are you available? Kate stood, grabbed her jacket, and walked out. Dylan was already by the rig keys in hand, eyes alert. He looked at her, waiting. Kate climbed into the driver's seat instead. Dylan blinked. You driving? Kate nodded. Get in. Dylan climbed into the passenger seat, quiet. Kate keyed the mic. Medic 9 in service, Naitzam, she said. The dispatcher acknowledged. The rig rumbled to life under her hands. The bay door rolled up, cold air rushing in. As she pulled out into the fading light, the station fell behind her in the rearview mirror. Not a place she was hiding anymore. Not a place that needed her to be smaller. The road stretched ahead, wet pavement reflecting streetlights. Another call would come, and then another, because that was how it worked. Kate's eyes stayed forward. Her hands were steady on the wheel. The titanium ring caught the last of the sun. She did not turn it. She did not need to.